So it's 2 o'clock, so we will call to order our regular meeting of council. We have an agenda in front of us. Would somebody like to move approval of our agenda?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Okay, moved by Councillor Solda. Is there a seconder?
Second, Madam Mayor.
By Councillor Washington. Are there any late items to add? City Clerk, any late items?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if council would like to consider adding a late delegation from Heidi Hartman, the Regional Director for BC Housing, and then to allow Ms. Hartman to speak first and therefore adjusting the other two delegations.
Sure, would somebody like to move that as an amendment to our agenda? Moved by
So moved,
Councillor
Madam Mayor.
Wilson, moved by Councillor Corbeil. Thank you. So on that amendment, we'll vote on that first. All in favor? Carried. And on the agenda as amended, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Before we start, we'll recognize that we're holding our meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Huipachesset and Sushot First Nations. And we have minutes of our special meeting of council held at 9:30 a.m. and our regular meeting of council held at 2 p.m. on November 9th. Would somebody like to move adoption? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Washington. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And public input. Do we have any public input today?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Then we will move on to delegations and we will go first to Heidi Hartman from BC Housing. Heidi, welcome and thanks for joining us. And I will just pass it over to you to start.
Thank you, and thanks for the invite, Your Worship. I'm very pleased to be here and just wanted to provide the opportunity to answer any questions and provide updates about BC Housing sheltering program provincially. So here in Port Alberni, we do fund year-round shelter beds, as well as through COVID, we have what we call the capacity expansion beds. And those were what used to be the extreme weather beds that we opened up and made them available throughout COVID. So they weren't weather dependent. And that created the opportunity for vulnerable people to be able to come inside and to ensure that they're to provide a protocol so that there weren't cluster outbreaks in any of our communities. One thing I did want to highlight is that occupancy of the capacity expansion shelter beds in some of our communities has been very low. But the important thing is that those beds are available when they are required or if needed. What we do find through the Housing First principles that BC Housing follows for both our shelter beds and for our supportive housing is the fact that while beds may be available or whether it's shelter or housing, that folks may choose not to access those resources, even though they may be readily available. But the really key piece to that is to meet people where they're at, to always have those resources available if there is the change of mind. The example that I would use to that is that we have shelter beds in Victoria, actually, that are probably what community tends to say is low barrier or minimal barrier. I tend to use the language welcoming and accessible. But in Victoria, we do have one shelter in particular that's one of our most welcoming and accessible shelter people are actively using within the shelter and in the common spaces. And there are folks that are outside of the shelter. They may never come and access the beds per se, but they may partake and connect with staff. They may receive meals, but they don't actively spend the night in that bed. And that's the housing first. It's recognizing that that resource is going to be available for that date. When those folks change their mind, we want as many folks as we can to bring them inside and ensure that they have that warm bed and that roof over their head, but also recognize that this time might not be the right time for some of the folks that we do serve in community.
Thanks for that, Heidi. So I think it'd be great if council just had an opportunity to ask questions, maybe about BC Housing's role or specific, housing operations that we have in the community. Start with Councillor Solda.
Thank you for that report, Heidi. So I have several questions. The first one is, how many beds are allocated in the shelter hotel in Port Alberni? I'm just talking about our community only at this moment. Have you?
Sure. So BC Housing funds 15 year-round shelter beds through PASS. There were an additional beds through the capacity shelter program that were opened. I believe it was 8. The occupancy of those beds has been very low.
This is in Port Alberni?
This is in Port Alberni at the Port Alberni shelter. So we've got the purpose-built shelter at our home on 8th, where there's the shelter beds there. Above is the supportive housing as well. Port Alberni Shelter Society had provided a budget to operate overflow beds at their former shelter location.
Okay, so my question too is, for these beds, how long can they stay there? Can someone stay in those rooms? Do you know by chance? Like if it's only overnight, it's not feasible here.
So I want to make sure I understand your question. Are you asking, Councillor, can people stay for above 30
Yes.
days, above 40? Yes. So BC Housing's shelter program isn't time limited. So potentially folks could stay past 30 days. I know that's something that we've worked provincially because we had many shelters in various communities around the province that had a 30-day rule. From BC Housing's perspective, our goal is we recognize that because potentially there isn't affordable housing opportunities in the community, people may have to stay beyond that 30-day time frame.
Okay, so and also the with the beds, they haven't been totally utilized. You haven't had I guess if you want to put it, a sold out night type of thing.
No, I believe for the occupancy report that I received earlier that for October and November, the year-round shelter beds were about 92 and 94%, but I can confirm those numbers. But the uptake for the shelter expansion shelter beds was lower.
I would love to see
that. Yeah, I do want to preface that the year-round shelter beds are available 24/7. Usually extreme weather beds or shelter capacity beds may only be overnight.
It would be great to see some stats when you eventually have them. Can you also tell me, there are people out there who do not want to access support or overnight. Do you have reasons why? Have you heard why they don't want to be in the shelter or stay overnight?
Yeah, and I'm going to speak to that provincially, is that some folks, even in a minimal barrier or low barrier or welcoming shelter, some do not want to follow the program. There's intake, there's sharing of information, consent forms, and that comes from BC Housing having to collect data and be accountable for public funding. So sometimes it's very different based on individuals' needs. Sometimes it's the rules, sometimes it's the minimal paperwork that has to be done. Sometimes it has to do with sharing information. Sometimes it has to do with shelter operators and the model that they operate.
And you oversee that part of the contract, right? You have all this in the contract and everything with the shelters.
Yeah,
Okay,
our
and-
shelter providers, whether it's year-round shelters or the capacity expansion shelters, they all enter into a support service agreement with us.
Okay, one last question, Madam Mayor. Regarding warming stations, do you also have warming stations that are available for those who do not want to use the shelter, as well as outreach help for, obviously, some people need the outreach help?
Yeah, and we're really proud to have a great outreach provider in Port Alberni, which is CMHA. So yes, we do have outreach. At current, BC Housing we don't have a program for warming stations. From my work up and down the island, that work has predominantly been done by municipalities or communities through, other funding sources like United Way, foundations. Courtney is the one I'm thinking of, and I think the city provided the building, and the funding came through, whether it was Reaching Homes and COVID funding through the federal government. I'm not sure what the operational funding looks like or the source.
So everybody got funding for warming stations pretty well, sounds like.
Yes, not through BC Housing, but through potentially other community funders.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, and thanks for a couple of examples there, because we have a couple of groups locally working on setting up a warming center, some nonprofit service providers, and they haven't been able to find funding for that yet. So I think I'll reach out to a couple of the ones that you've mentioned and look to see where they were able to access their funding. And I think that one thing that I just wanted to highlight from your comments, Heidi, and from the meeting that you and I had on Friday, is the kind of like the space numbers available at the shelter don't necessarily represent or align with the amount of people in our community who are homeless. So I think that's an important thing that we both recognized, that just because there is space at the shelter doesn't always necessarily mean that everybody has somewhere to go. So it's that disconnect of breaking down the barriers and working with the people who, are not able to access that option or choose to not access that option for a number of reasons, some of which you've highlighted. So I just want to appreciate BC Housing's willingness to be here and have these conversations with us and continue to work on providing more options for the people who are currently not able to or not able to for personal reasons access these services. Are there other questions from councillors? Councillor Haggard and then Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, Heidi. Nice to meet you virtually. I hear your name a lot. And I just want to say thank you so much to BC Housing for all the work that you're doing in our community for affordable housing for people that need homes over their heads. But maybe, I don't know if you're able to, or if you could just speak very briefly on the role of BC Housing versus the role of municipality to provide housing. It seems like people's expectations are that is the city's role. Can you just speak to that?
Oh, Heidi, you're muted.
Sorry, and Councillor Haggard, I heard the majority of your question, so if I miss it, you were cutting out a bit on my system. So if I don't answer, please ask your question again. But BC Housing, we can't do our work on our own. It's really about partnerships. And if you'll note the recent announcements, they do deal with partnerships with Campbell River. We entered into an MOU with Campbell River, and we were able to we'll be opening in February, supportive housing projects, I think about 50 beds there. And so really that's really what it comes down to. If we have capital dollars, very often we're able to make land acquisitions and work with the city, where we can partner on reduction of DCC costs, those kind of things where we want to partner, but definitely none of us can do our work on our own, and BC Housing isn't any different. We have funding to provide usually capital for building, and ongoing operating costs for 24/7 supports and the like of that. But if we can partner and enter into commitments of land, it certainly helps projects go forward in communities.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that answer.
Thank you. And we, Heidi, you'll probably be aware, but we have partnered on several projects where we've, as the municipality, contributed the land. And we do also have a DCC 50% reduction bylaw for supportive and affordable housing. So, and I know that there's the current call out with BC Housing for the Community Housing Fund. We have a couple of nonprofits who we know are making applications to that fund. So we are hopeful that we will get some more funding into this community, and we have committed to land agreements on some of those projects as well.
Yeah, and if I could just add, we've really appreciated the partnership and the foresight of Port Alberni to be responsive to what the needs are, because I believe they're, you know, one of the projects is for women fleeing violence, and we also know that while supportive housing is a need, that affordable affordable housing for families is very key, and you know, definitely aids in the prevention piece as we ensure that families have that strong foundational home.
For sure. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Hartman, for your enlightening report. Just a question about the shelter. I understand that there's rules, like if you go to the shelter, you have to abide by the house rules. And could you just give us a quick list of the rules, just sort of for the people at home?
Yeah, no, I don't have access to them right now for this meeting, but definitely it is up to our nonprofit shelter operators or housing operators if they operate housing to have those house rules. As part of an operational review, BC Housing will review those every 3 years. But it is the society enters into those agreements. For what I will say is that for communities where there is only one shelter, and this would be an example in Port Alberni, we need the shelter to be as accessible, as welcoming as possible. In larger communities like Victoria or Vancouver, there may be a range of shelter opportunities where some of them may have higher barriers where people can't use on site. There may be more rules that way. But those kind of shelter operations are more focused in communities where there's a variety of shelter options.
Thank you. Councillor Solda, and then Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Regarding the homeless and people looking for shelters, do you have the stats that are on Vancouver Island, not necessarily in Port Alberni, just overall on Vancouver Island? Because we are not just the unique community, although it's our home. So I'm just kind of curious to know if you have that information, because everybody's going through this. So
you're so right. And we use BC Housing looks at a variety of things. We look at the point in time count. So I'm aware with COVID, not all the communities were able to undertake their point in time count. The other data that we look at as we work through with where are the needs of a specific community, we look at supportive housing applications and family housing applications. So I recall for Port Alberni, we're at about 80 to 90 supportive housing applications who are on various lists waiting for whether it's the CMHI housing at Rogers Street or our house on 8th, our home on 8th.
So saying that, we know that homeless could be one step away from a paycheck, right? I've seen it where people have said that they've got their notice, they have to get out because they're moving a family into this rental. So they have to find a place. But I've seen where people have said, I only make $500. I can only afford $500 rent. And rents have gone up in Port Alberni over $1,000, some of them. and people can't afford that. So what is BC Housing going to be able to do for us to be able to mitigate this growing issue?
It's you've identified an issue that's with us provincially and probably nationally, Councillor. We're aware that the housing that we have doesn't meet the demand. I'm aware in Nanaimo there's 50 people in encampment outside of the city hall there that don't have housing solution. BC Housing, again, it's about partnerships and how can we work together to provide more housing solutions. A new resource, and this was allocated to Port Alberni as well, was through CMHA. We were able, through the federal funding and the Canadian Housing Benefit, able to add more rent supplements to their portfolio, and that creates solutions for folks that affordability for them to live in the market and to be able to make their rent more affordable.
And I hate to say it, I unfortunately believe that by closing some of the facilities that could help some people with their addictions and that could make them go forward in life. I think it's the provincial government downloading to the communities, and it really sucks. Sorry.
No, and I fall under the Ministry of Housing. So again, I'd speak to a partnerships counselor and say that's where we need Island Health. And that's where BC Housing is really working closely with Island Health, because we can provide the roof over the head. But I want to acknowledge there's some folks that we couldn't, that their needs are way beyond supportive housing that a nonprofit operator could support them with. So, and those very may well be some of the folks that we see on our streets, that their support level needs are significantly higher than what can be offered in supportive housing. But my understanding from health is that they may not meet the need to be have more stringent supports through an institution.
Heidi, we have, based on the information that you have for our community right now, do you see a need, or does BC Housing see a need? You might not be able to answer this right now, but for more supportive housing in our community, because we know that we do have nonprofits, existing nonprofits, who have made applications for more supportive housing, which maybe there hasn't been a stream to fund it yet, or maybe it was determined to not be a need. But are you able to answer if BC Housing sees that need in our community?
We see the need in many communities. We would look at the point in time count, look at that data. The other key data that we have is through the supportive housing registry, which I mentioned. I believe there's 80 to 90 applications. So that indicates that there continues to be a need in your community.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil and then Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions, Heidi. One, you talked about the overflow. I assume that's at the old shelter. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
So, and you're aware that we've had people in tents and in the bush and whatnot. If they were offered rooms at the old shelter, would that work? From what I understand, nobody's in there right now, correct? If we were to offer those rooms, they could be available?
I was under the impression it's actually shelter beds. I don't know if the rooms have been offered at this point. Some of the challenges that we hear, and I'm going to put my Vancouver Island hat on, is that some of our nonprofits have identified they don't have adequate staffing available to be able to support opening other beds. So the capacity expansion beds that are at the former shelter were not 24/7, and they were beds. I don't believe they were the bunk units that were above.
Okay. My second question, in regards to, and you'll remember Leonard Krogh, a little over a year ago, I think, made a comment that there needs to be a higher level of care for some people. Is there anything in the works that, some people that really need help to look after themselves? Is there something for those people?
I'm not aware of any, but the legislature will be sitting this week, and potentially there will be ministers speaking to those. Again, I think that really goes to partnerships and how can BC Housing work with Island Health to have a model that supports those more vulnerable, high support needs folks.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you. And we know that there was definitely something specific in the NDP platform about the, housing options for our highest need people who really need, a medical level of support as well. So hopefully we'll see at least conversations and we'll certainly be talking to our new MLA about this. Councillor Paulson.
Just thank you very much, Heidi, for coming on such short notice today, and I think shedding some light on the division of responsibility, particularly from the provincial level. I liked what you talked about with regards to partnerships, and I know in today's agenda there's actually a letter for information that the mayor has submitted, and I think it's a very obvious example of the mayor lobbying and trying to work together with BC Housing. I don't know that there's an absolute solution. Councillor Corbeil asked one of the questions about additional help for some of the people that really don't fit the character that would fit into under the rules and regulations of the shelter. This might be maybe not an appropriate question, but for some people, if they're identified maybe by CMHA or somebody, and we don't have a particular facility because we're a smaller community, we can't address every single need, but I'm wondering if there might be relocation help where we could maybe have somebody relocated to another facility somewhere else on the island where they could actually get that help, and realizing that the city, we don't have anybody on staff that is a social worker or drug and alcohol counselor, but would certainly advocate and lobby on that behalf.
And great question and observation. I actually think that would be more of an Island Health call. With their they've got mental health and addictions teams, and they would have the resources to do with those mental health resources, where BC Housing, we're focused on housing. Yes, there is supportive housing with 24/7 supports, but again, it's operated by a nonprofit capacity, not with the psychologists or those specialized teams to be able to support those higher needs that you're describing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Heidi? Okay. Well, Heidi, thanks again. Oh, sorry, Councillor Solda.
Sorry. So with BC Housing, are they actually working with the provincial government? I know you're BC, but for the lobbying and that for more beds and stuff, I just think, like with the stats that you said for homelessness in Port Alberni, that there might be more beds you can buy, or even hotel rooms. Like I know there was some hotel rooms just recently, although we're hearing different stories from the homeless. But anyways, can you buy more beds, and have you been doing your own lobbying with the government to do more for these communities?
Absolutely. We have ongoing conversation with our municipality, which is the Municipality of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And we recognize the strategy behind that, because it again speaks to the partnerships between municipalities and BC Housing in putting forward housing opportunities. Mayor Minion mentioned the Community Housing Fund, which has an active call, and we're excited and we're hopeful that some of our Port Alberni nonprofits will respond to that. I'm recognizing that is still affordable housing for families or seniors. It's still a housing option along the continuum. So we need housing along the continuum. So whether it's affordable housing for families or seniors, or it's more rent supplements to be able to support people in market housing or supportive housing. Definitely BC Housing is always putting those requests forward. We're continually reviewing our data to see where the gaps in are provincially, to do whatever we can to address those and get as many people inside out of the cold weather, and also to ensure housing stability for folks in need of affordable housing.
Obviously, we have age gaps problems. We have a youth that's coming off the system, right? And they have nowhere to go because at a certain age, that's it, bye, and you're on your own. And of course, affordability for rent is not there. We have in between, and then we have the seniors. Totally, I agree there. I know seniors that are couch surfing because they can't afford with what pension they make. Obviously, you know, when your rents are over $1,000 and you only collect $1,400 or $1,300, depends on your pension, right? We have some big gaps. So yeah, we have a lot of gaps, and I'd like to see them slowly curve in, you know.
Absolutely.
And I know our mayor is doing a lot of lobbying with the government and stuff like
Yes.
that. A lot of people don't see that. And I know she's been on there maybe every second day type of thing. I don't know, Shari, you could explain all that. But she's been doing a lot of lobbying. People don't see all that.
No, absolutely. You do have a very supportive municipality, and that's why we are really excited to work with Port Alberni, and the opportunities that we talked about earlier are coming forward because of those partnerships. The other thing, just going back to the seniors, is I didn't speak to it specifically, but we have a couple different rent supplement programs. So SAFER is the one for seniors to help them to be able to afford living in the market as well. So that's another housing or rent supplement program that is a good one for seniors, especially if you're describing situations where folks are sleeping on couches. And it's on our website. There's actually a calculation process that shows what the amount of their rent supplement would be, and a guideline of how they would qualify.
So we need more, you know, like everybody else, but we do. And thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I do know that I've personally, on behalf of the city, been working with 3 nonprofits that are submitting to the Community Housing Fund, submitting applications. So as a council, we're really excited about those opportunities coming forward. I know that BC Housing has been in contact with some of those already and has been supporting those applications in getting prepared. I do want to just highlight the need in our community for additional supportive housing. And I know that CMHA is one example of a group in the community that has been working on a supportive application or supportive housing project for the last few years with support from the city. And there just hasn't been an opportunity for that to be funded. So while we very much appreciate how supportive BC Housing has been in our community, developing affordable housing and the creation of the supportive housing beds at the shelter, I want to just really strongly reaffirm that we have a strong need in our community for additional supportive housing beds. So we are really optimistic as a community that we're going to see a shift toward, opening up opportunities for that style of housing rather than just more affordable. Not to diminish that we do want that affordable housing in our community as well. And I think we've got some really good applications coming forward, but there's definitely a specific need here for the supportive side. And I'm glad to hear that that's recognized by BC Housing. Okay, so with that, thank you very much, Heidi, for coming on. And look forward to connecting again in the next few days.
Well, and thank you for the invite and thank you for the opportunity. And please do reach out if you have any questions. And thank you for being such great municipal partners so we can move forward opportunities that are much needed in your community.
Thanks again, Heidi.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Okay, so we will move on to our second delegation, and I see Erin popping up here. So we have Erin Bremer-Mitchell from Cascadia Seaweed, Manager of Communications, to tell us about Cascadia Seaweed and all of the great work that they're doing in our community. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I just want to recognize that must have been a heavy conversation, and I appreciate everything that you do to keep your community and the members of the community safe. So thank you for that. And I hope you're okay to move on to another presentation, hopefully something a little lighter. I'm going to share my screen and take you through our slide presentation, I think. Sorry, there. Can you see it now? Is it coming to you?
It's coming. We see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go. All these different virtual platforms to get used to. As Mayor Minions mentioned, my name is Erin. I'm the Manager of Communications and Engagement here at Cascadia Cascadia Seaweed in Sydney. I am grateful.
Oh, Erin, you've just cut out. Can anyone hear Erin? I can't hear her anymore. You just cut out a moment ago.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yeah, we can hear you now.
There's other people in the office, but I did switch to a different Wi-Fi. Hopefully that helps. I'm presenting from our head office in Sydney, the WSÁNEĆ territory, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to give you a high-level overview of our company. We're a fast-moving bunch. There's a lot to share, so I'm going to go through this rather quickly for you. Hopefully, leave some time for questions at the end. Let's start with some fun facts. Did you know that seaweed is not actually a plant? It's a macroalgae. The difference being that a plant has a root system and a macroalgae has a clasp that holds on to rocks or ropes, for example. Did you know that seaweed is categorized into 3 groups, red, green, and brown? But just because you pick up a piece of seaweed and it looks brown doesn't mean that that's the group that it's part of. Did you know that seaweed sequesters significantly more carbon than trees, like 20 times as much carbon? And did you know that there are 630 identified species just in British Columbia? So much more than this slimy stuff that you pick up off the beach. There's a Native American proverb that we like to recognize. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. This is the message that drives us as individuals and our team forward. We are Cascadia Seaweed. We were founded in June of 2019 by 3 maritime professionals who for the first 6 months did all the heavy lifting. They signed an agreement with New Chalmette Seafoods. They installed 2 1-hectare farms in Barkley Sound with partnership with the Huu-ay-aht and Utchaglasit territories. And now we are a team of 15. We're researchers, engineers, product developers, scientists, marketers, a great team here based in Sydney, and we're growing to be the largest provider of ocean cultivated seaweed in North America. We are fully integrated from the seed that we produce in our own nursery, which is located in Banfield. We install low impact farms in the ocean. Then we deploy seeds onto that farm infrastructure in the ocean. And then Mother Nature does all this miraculous work for 4 months. The kelp grows and sequesters carbon, provides habitat, helps with ocean acidification. And we monitor the growth. And then in the spring, April, May, we harvest. We are super proud to be tenants in the Port Alberni Food Hub, the Dock Plus. That's really been a wonderful experience for us, everybody at the team at the Dock Plus. Sorry, you go back there. Whoops, a daisy. So we do our primary processing at the food hub there, and then we distribute our crop, and this is what we use it for. The majority of our crop this year will be made into consumer packaged food products. So we are developing our very own seaweed snacks. We're looking at a seaweed jerky, a vegan jerky, and also a healthy and nutritious seaweed chip, and possibly even a salad this year. So in the spring, you can look for the brand name Cove, K-O-V-E, on grocery store shelves, but you didn't hear that from me. That's still top secret. It'll come out in May, April or May next year. Agrifeeds. So this is about methane reduction. We know that from other jurisdictions that if you feed livestock a very small percentage of seaweed, you can drastically reduce methane emissions, like 90%. This research has been conducted on a warm water species called Asparagopsis, and our science team believes that we can produce similar results with a native species from British Columbia. So we've collected about 10 species so far, and we're working with an independent scientist out of Thompson Rivers University. And we've also just been contacted by 2 universities in Alberta to send crop there for further testing, which is amazing. You know, for example, methane is 28 times more potent than CO2, and cow burps represent 6% of global methane emissions. So if we could reduce that by 90% just by feeding them some seaweed, that would be really great. Biopackaging. So think plastic. Ideally, our seaweed snacks will be packaged in a seaweed-based wrapper in the not so distant future. We are conducting research on that, working with an organization out of UBC to develop that technology. Pharmaceuticals, human health, advancing human health is part of our values. So developing pharmaceuticals that could help prevent disease with all the nutritional benefits in different types of seaweed, that's something that we have committed to developing in the future. Carbon offsets, we see value in growing kelp just for carbon offsets. We're working with a global organization called Oceans 2050. Their mandate is to restore ocean ecosystems by 2050. And we're working with them to quantify how much carbon is actually sequestered during the growth cycle. So we know that it's significantly more than trees. We know that it's around or up to 20%, but we don't know how much actually sloughs off into the deep ocean during the growth cycle. So we're working with them to quantify that information. And as I mentioned earlier, there's only 630 species, and we're looking at a handful of them. But we know that there is opportunity to conduct research on the rest of these species. And we are very grateful to the city of Port Alberni for realizing the opportunity and helping us go through a pre-feasibility study for the Canadian Centre for Seaweed Research. It would be absolutely amazing for Vancouver Island, for British Columbia, for Canada, really, to have this facility in Port Alberni. We are very grateful for the opportunity to work with you on that. So there's 5 things that that move us forward. The opportunities are absolutely endless in this industry. So there's 5 things that that we use to keep our focus. Climate action being the first one. Our commitment to leaving the world a better place, leaving it better than when we found it. Human health and food security, providing a locally grown, nutritious and delicious food product is again part of our values. Providing green jobs within a blue economy. We are primed to help communities recover from this global pandemic with new jobs. Indigenous partnerships and resiliency for coastal communities. Well, that's why we got started working with Indigenous partnerships and coastal communities to keep people in their homes, providing meaningful work. So that's something that we look forward to working with communities like Port Alberni to do. And so we're building a whole new sector, not just a business. We believe that we could generate easily 3,000 jobs and $1 billion for coastal British Columbia. We believe that the bigger our company is, the more benefit that we can provide. So there's lots. I could keep going, but I'll just try to summarize a few key points about who we are and what we're doing. We are farmers. We are seaweed farmers. We're aiming to produce a large quantity of high quality seaweed along the coast of British Columbia. We partner with First Nations and coastal communities who would like to cultivate seaweed either as farm owners or simply with an agreement with Cascadia to let us farm in their territory, in your territory. We see value in producing human foods, agri-feeds, biopackaging, pharmaceuticals, and carbon offsets with our seaweed, while addressing climate change and human health with green jobs and economic opportunity for coastal communities. Our biggest challenge is actually meeting the growing demand. We do need governments like yourselves to realize the value in this industry and to communicate that with our provincial and federal counterparts. We see ourselves as conduits of funds to First Nations, to research institutions, to coastal communities, and we check all the boxes for a new blue economy to recover from this global pandemic. We are super grateful for the support and enthusiasm from the City of Port Alberni, Mr. Deacon in particular, the team at the Dock Plus, Zoran and Dave, along with Mark at the Pacific Seaweed Growers Association. It's really wonderful to see people come around to new ideas and build on it and move forward together. And I guess you should know that we're planning a seaweed festival in May of 2021. We're looking at a hybrid model, but it'll have a professional development conference and then a community component and hopefully an agritourism component as well. So on that note, I'll leave it to you for any discussions and questions.
Well, thank you, Erin, and thanks for presenting. I think that Cascadia is a company working in our area that a lot of people are not aware of yet, and I think it's just completely inspiring to hear about the world of seaweed and all of the innovation that is going on around us. So we're thankful to have you guys working at Port Alberni, and glad that Council is having an opportunity to hear more. I will go to Councillor Corbeil and then Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Erin, for your presentation. How much production are you doing in a year? Is it measured in pounds, I assume, or kilograms?
Metric tons.
Ton.
So yeah, so we'll be cultivating 400 wet metric tons next spring. That's 20 hectares of ocean farm infrastructure. I didn't even mention our land-based operation. We actually lease space in Nanaimo to cultivate a different species called dulse, a red species, for our food products. And we are doing 10,000 liter tanks that will produce 800 kilograms a week.
And what's involved in the actual processing at the food hub?
Okay, so we have just partnered with North Island College to explore that. So we know now what form factors we need to produce for our human food products, for our co-packers. And North Island College is actually going through the process of identifying the equipment for us and the stages and what we need to do to actually develop those form factors, develop the seaweed into those form factors. So right now we are leasing a wonderful empty space in the Dock Plus.
Hopefully not empty for too long.
Thank you very much, Erin, and I wish you guys all the luck.
Thank you so much, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Hi, Erin. It's great to have you on here today and have some really positive news. And I know that the proponents of the Food Hub are ecstatic to have you as an anchor tenant down there. I will say that I believe you actually have a bit of a farm in Useless Inlet, and I saw that, and you would never know there's a whole bunch of seaweed elves working underneath the surface. That's how invasive the process is. Like it's very benign. I guess cut to the chase. You're talking about marketing in May, a product. And I'm just curious about where you're at with marketing. Will it be mostly local grocery stores, branching out probably in the future to international markets more
Yes, as we continue to grow and grow up at scale, then we'll be able to produce more crop, which will be able to generate more crop that we can use for the human foods, but also for agri-feeds and biopackaging and so on. So that's part of our scale up plan. Next year, this harvest, the majority of it will go to the food processing. And we haven't completely determined our distribution strategy yet. We're looking at a combination of online and retail distribution, but it's really going to depend on the units. We don't want to land a shelf space in a grocery store and then not be able to replenish it. Whereas if we sold online, that would give us more control of our inventory. So we're still exploring that, the answer to that question, but I can certainly keep you posted.
Well, how do I get my hands on some product?
As soon as I send you some.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much, Erin. And you kept thanking Port Alberni through your presentation, but Rudy, we want to thank you for choosing Port Alberni for this very innovative business that you're starting here. And I'm sure you're going to be a very integral part of the success of the Food Hub and what we envision for that property. So thank you so much. And I look forward to trying your product. So let us know when it's available. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And fun fact for anyone who didn't know, Erin used to be on council in Sydney. So I met Erin at UBCM a few years ago. Other questions for Erin? Okay. Well, Erin, Councillor Washington.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, most of my questions did get answered, but I guess for the folks at home, again, sorry for that cliche, but what kind of jobs will we see at a local level in Port Alberni?
Okay, so the processing through the Food Hub is going to generate some jobs. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression it was 35 jobs at the Food Hub that was going to produce. Now we're looking at building the Canadian Centre for Seaweed Research in Port Alberni, and that would not only create jobs, but it would attract new talent and new people to your community. And then the majority of jobs would be related to farm infrastructure. So we would be purchasing we try to purchase as much infrastructure from communities that are local to the farms. Some of the farming jobs, renting vessels, transportation, distribution. There's opportunities for people to establish farms, in Barkley Sound and work on those farms. So it's pretty vast depending on what an individual skill set is.
Thank you. Yeah, and for anyone who's not aware, Cascadia has developed some really good partnerships already, of course, with local nations, but also with just local businesses like Coakley Wire and Rope, for example. So yeah, we're really thankful that they are reaching out and looking for those local opportunities to support the businesses that we have here. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Erin, for coming on today and telling us more about seaweed, and look forward to connecting again soon.
Great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Okay, our next delegation is from Alberni Aquarium Association. So we have Amira Strain on behalf of the association seeking council support in relation to continued operations. Welcome. So you are muted, but whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot about the automatic mute on Zoom. Yeah, and I apologize for my voice. I am currently battling a little bit of a cold, so I'm a little raspy, but it's all good. So yes, my name is Amira Strain. I am the manager for the Alberni Aquarium, and I was asked on behalf of the board to come and present to you guys today. As with the current COVID-19 pandemic, we have been facing a little bit of financial issues with the rise of cases again. In the last couple of weeks, we were successful over the summer. We received a grant from 100+ Women Who Care, which allowed us to create a new exhibit titled The Small Things, which focuses on different natural biomes in our local nature. And it has allowed us to begin creating virtual tours for school groups and homeschooled children who are not able to come in person due to the current pandemic. However, because we had to switch boards and we have become a new association, we are not able to apply for grants for nonprofit associations until the end of May 2021, which has caused an issue with us finding funding in grant applications. And yeah, we have seen a drastic decrease in visitors over the last couple of weeks due to the new provincial health orders, as well as the rise in cases. So we are looking to, one, give up the upstairs of the building that we rent from city to help reduce rent costs, as well as asking for a potential rent freeze for at least 2 to 3 months so we can continue to keep our animals healthy and get these virtual tours up and running so we can continue our drive, which is education, and keep educating the children in our communities around the environment and sustainability. So yeah, pretty much we have been looking at our books, and if we don't receive help from city, we will not be able to continue to be in business past January or past December. So yeah.
Thank you, Amira. And thanks for the work that you guys are doing at the aquarium, recognizing that it's very difficult times right now, you know, especially for a new association starting off. One thing that I wonder if you've considered is partnering with an existing nonprofit to continue applying for grants. There are groups in our community that have done that when they haven't been able to access grants on their own. They've formed partnerships with a different society that is eligible. I'm not sure on the specifics of if that's always permitted or only in certain situations, but I'm sure there are nonprofits out there that you know, would love to lend a hand if they could. So just throwing that out there if it's something that you could consider if you haven't already.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. It would just have to be looking into the grants to see if, as we are such a unique business, that I'm not entirely sure how to collaborate on that one, but I would definitely will be looking into it as a possibility.
Thank you. Start with Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And further to that, I would also suggest that you go to some of the service clubs like the Gyro or the Kingsmen or the Lions, because a lot of their focus is on youth as well. And if you can work with them on your youth component of doing virtual tours, then be able to donate some money. I mean, they're probably don't have as much funds as they have been in previous years, but that is their focus and their mandate to support youth in the community. So give that a try as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've been working with we've got a few grants from NetP for our special programs. Currently, we have 2 of our workers are employed through a NetP grant, as we do have a focus on hiring youth and giving youth a super unique work and training opportunities. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there as well. So, but that only goes until the end of December, but I will for sure contact Gyro and Kingsman to see what potential collaboration is there.
Thank you. Councillor Washington, did I see your hand? No. Councillor Solda? Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just recently, I believe it was the federal government is talking about a new program for rent relief for small business. I know there was a program before which the landlord had to apply for, and being a city, we were unable to do that. But I'm wondering now if you're not able to apply for this, I believe it's up to 65% rent relief.
Has that just been released, or has that been in like the last 3 weeks?
It was just last week, and it specifically, the original program did specifically, you know, make it so that any tenant of a municipality was not eligible, and this new program does include tenants who rent from municipalities. So you would have to ensure you meet the criteria in other ways, but you won't be excluded just because you rent from a municipality now. So it is a brand new program.
Okay. Yeah, my only worry with that is, again, the fact, as we have been unable to attain records that, say we have been in business for over a year, because we are a new association, seems to have been a big problem in applying for any of these rent reliefs or grant subsidies. But I will for sure look that up.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I wasn't going to say anything, but I look at it, all organizations are having issues on financial, and some have rent and some don't, and because their mortgages are paid for, but they still have overhead costs. So and then the businesses surrounding where you are, they're having issues too, as well as other businesses in our community. So it's really hard for me to do, to give that kind of support, to give you a rent relief when there's existing businesses in the same thing. Why should they also get a tax break rent relief? And if the government has now come out with that new one, which Madam Mayor, would be great for us to send that information to our tenants down at the quay there. So in case they don't know, because I missed that one. So that's my only qualm on that. And the other thing too is if maybe contact the school board. Maybe they're interested in helping you, since you are working with the school board, with the kids in the classes and stuff, and doing things like that. And I would make a contact information on that, contact with them. I don't have a problem with the upstairs, downstairs. You can work, myself, if you don't need the upstairs type of thing, that you have to work with staff and that. But I just wanted to be blunt and tell you I have problems regarding that whole thing, because there's other people in this community going through the same thing. And I know you have a unique, but so does everybody else, they could say. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The last time you were in and we were talking about some assistance, we did discuss with you about not leasing out the upstairs, and our Director of Parks and Heritage did say it was possible and they could separate it off and have a separate door. Then we could look at leasing out the upstairs for office space or whatever. So I'm certainly willing to do that and cut your rate. I can't remember what the rate that would be, but as for rent relief, unfortunately, because we do have other tenants down there, if we do it for you, we do have to do it for everybody else. But if there's anything else that we can do to assist you with, please let us know, because I would hate to see the aquarium close. But
Yeah.
I'm certainly willing to do that.
Yeah, I know for sure there's already a second door in place. So the only issue with transitioning out the upstairs is we would have to find a new place for our saltwater reservoir. But other than that, there is already a separate door, and the door between that hallway and the aquarium can be locked. But so that's pretty much ready to go whenever we find a new place for our reservoir and get that installed.
Thank you. So Council, I would suggest that we start with directing our staff to work with the Aquarium Association on the possibility of splitting out those units and what that would do to a rent decrease. And then subsequent to that, I would encourage the aquarium to explore the new rent relief program. I believe applications actually open today. And there is possibility for rent relief up to 90% even through that program if you have to close due to impacts of COVID-19. So before we consider any direct subsidies potentially, I think that we have to encourage you to apply to the federal programs first, just to keep a level playing field for all of the tenants that we do have. And I would say that if you are excluded from those programs because you're a new association, because you're a nonprofit, for any other reason, I would encourage you to reach back out to us. I think we all, across the board want to see the aquarium be successful. We just have to make sure that we are diligent with the limited funds that we do have, and that we certainly encourage people to apply to the existing federal programs first. Councillor Haggard, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just going to make another suggestion to you. If you're looking for assistance in writing for grants or maybe some marketing assistance, if you contact the business development officer at Community Futures, she's helped other nonprofits, and I'm sure she would love to work with you as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, and thanks for the work you guys are doing.
Yeah,
Look
thank you.
forward to coming back in again soon. Thank you. Okay, council, we have no unfinished business today, so we will move on to staff reports. And item 1 is accounts. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated November 23, 2020 be received, and checks numbering 147482 to 147568 inclusive, and payments of accounts totaling $837,446.37 be approved.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And item 2 from the Manager of Community Safety, we have an update on 5170 Argyle Street, the Port Pub.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor. The report before council today is to provide a status update regarding the work that has been carried out at 5170 Argyle Street in relation to council's remedial action order and to obtain council's support in foregoing enforcement consideration at this time. On September 14th, council resolved remedial action requirements for 5170 Argyle Street. Since this time, the property owner and the new manager have been working with staff to address the requirements. Following ongoing inspections, a few items remain outstanding. However, the property owner continues to make improvements in bringing the property into compliance as per council's remedial order, including engaging the services of professionals where required. While the property owner has experienced a few setbacks, such as damage to the newly renovated washrooms, a down boiler, the owner and manager continue to make progress in fulfilling the list of requirements as outlined in council's order. Both the owner and manager continue to work with the current tenants who reside in the building and have hired security personnel to assist with managing undesired persons or unwelcome guests, and they've also engaged with the RCMP on this issue. And that is it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there questions from council? Councillor Paulson.
Just curious, and I think you alluded to, excuse me, is there ongoing work still going on there? I hate to see them stall out for any reason. They've had such a good response to the remedial action that we have for. I'm just wondering if there's observable ongoing work being done to finish the project to get completely compliant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We haven't been able to get into the building the last 2 weeks. We've been tied up with other projects. But we have been in touch with them to make sure that they are moving forward. They are working with the residential tenancy branch to have people removed. So we are emailing or texting back and forth, but we haven't been able to get into the building, and that should be done shortly to continue with an update to keep that going.
Thank you. Could you just elaborate on your comment about having people removed? Is that just their, like if they have a problem tenant, or are they evicting multiple people?
No, they have one tenant that's a problem tenant, and they are working with the residential tenancy branch. Their hearing was supposed to be set for January. So we were working with them on that one too. And so was the RCMP.
Perfect. That's great. I think that's an important distinction. Councillor Solda. Oh, saw a hand up over there. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Haggard.
I was just going to say, I'm very pleased that they are moving forward and working hard to complete all the items on the remedial action order that we gave them. It's unfortunate that they've had some setbacks, but I'm happy to hear that they're moving forward. So thank you for all your hard work, and thank your staff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So council, we have just a motion to receive written. I would suggest that we make a motion to receive, but that additional to that, we add an action item to follow up on this property again in 6 months. Obviously, if there's bylaw issues or any other complaints that come forward, our staff will follow up more frequently than that and be working on it as they normally would. But I would like to see this issue come back to council automatically for just a regular check-in to see how the property is doing 6 months from now, and make sure that we don't just let it fall off our radar if it starts to decline again. Okay. So with that, I will make a motion to receive and have a follow-up in 6 months.
Second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any final comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And item 3 from the Manager of Community Safety, 3118 3rd Avenue, the Harborview Apartments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council, that council, in the absence of progress being made on the part of the property owner to address the remedial action requirements as ordered by council, return to an in-camera meeting to consider council's next step in addressing the property located at 3118 3rd Avenue, noting that further considerations of this item in an in-camera meeting meets Section 90, subsection 1, subsection E of the Community Charter. City staff were able to conduct a site visit of the subject property on November 5th, 2020. At this time, city staff were able to confirm that the property remains in a state of disrepair, with the exception of interior doors being installed and exterior doors being made operational. All other remedial action requirements remain outstanding. The property owner has installed security cameras throughout the building, although this requirement was not part of council's order. Thank you.
Thank you. So council, this is just for information for the public, to make sure the public is aware that this has not fallen off our radar in any way, but rather that the next steps will be made in camera due to the ability for us to do that through the community charter for these discussions. Would somebody like to read the motion? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that council, in the absence of progress being made on the part of the property owner to address the remedial action requirements as ordered by council, return to an in-camera meeting to consider council's next steps in addressing property located at 3118 3rd Avenue, noting that further considerations of this item in an in-camera meeting meets Section 91E of the Community Charter.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Paulson. Any final comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And item 4 from the Manager of Community Safety, 3629, 3633, and 3655 4th Avenue remedial action orders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report before council today is for consideration of imposing remedial action requirements on properties that seriously contravene building and fire codes as well as city bylaws. The properties at 3629, 3633, 3655 4th Avenue. The report is very detailed and is structured in such a way as to provide council with all the information it needs in order to fully consider the issues and make decisions based on the evidence provided. Information is included in the report outlining council's authority in the community charter to impose remedial action requirements, as well as the process that must be followed. The registered owner of this property is Folded Hills Farms, based out of Victoria, and Randy Brown from Port Alberni. The property has been in a state of decline for a number of years. Since that time, the property has deteriorated significantly and has significant and increasing high call volumes that consume resources from police, fire, building, and bylaw services. The continuing and sustained pattern of nuisance activity inside the building and on the property is negatively impacting the community and creating immediate and immense concerns for safety of the residents, visitors, workers, city staff, and first responders. There are 2 appendices attached to this report. Appendix 1 contains correspondence seeking compliance to various building and bylaw contraventions, as well as provides photographs and clearly demonstrating the continued building and property issues and nuisance issues. Appendix 2 is correspondence from RCMP, noting particularly the calls for service have increased this year and their observations. Due to the bylaw infractions, calls requiring emergency response, and impacts to public health and safety, staff recommends that council by resolution declare this property and the building and properties to be in hazardous condition, a nuisance, and so dilapidated and unclean to be offensive to the community, and then impose the remedial actions as outlined. Should council proceed with the recommended resolutions, formal notice will be provided to the owner outlining the remedial actions required and the timeline for completion. The owner will have an opportunity to appeal to council for reconsideration of the resolution by providing written notice within 14 days of the date the notice is sent. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get to the motion, we will take questions from council. Councilor Solda.
Yeah, I have a quick question regarding the people that are living in the apartments there. Do we have a number? I know it could be a lot more than what we think we know, but, and also in the trailers that are on the lot?
No, we don't have exact numbers. We have a guesstimate of I think there were 6 suites, 6 apartments, and there's now 2 more that have been created. And they have a lot of people in them. There's an electrical room that has people in them.
Oh my God.
I understand that the trailers have more than one person in each trailer, not necessarily from the same family.
No, and I understand that too. Some people are sleeping under those trailers too. So what I would like to know is if we go ahead with this, will we have people there to help the displaced people, especially in the trailers? I mean, obviously the apartments probably will have the people still staying there, maybe. Will we have somebody to come in, hey, we can help you find a place? Because if they're not living in the trailers, where are they going to live? Again, on the street too. But we should have help if we go ahead with this. Have we thought of that?
Yes, working with BC Housing Authority and CMH, Canadian Mental Health.
Oh,
we
good.
would definitely be working with them to find.
Again, this is really disappointing when I look at the pictures. If nobody has been following the agenda, please go and look at the agenda. The pictures are on the agenda. Again, we have a slum landlord not looking after the people. And I will say that, that's me saying it, not council saying it. When I see people having to go back on the streets because there's no heat and it's warmer to be on the streets, that tells you a big story. A lot of people think, yeah, they have a roof over their head, but is it better than not having heat, not having anything in there other than the roof? I don't know. I can't answer that. That's how I feel. I feel that no one should live in those deplorable situations, and the landlord collects whatever rent he collects, and it goes in his pocket without him fixing it up. The garbage that's all over the place. When I look at the pictures and what makes it any different than the apartments. And if it was anybody else that had trailers that in their backyard like this, they would have had to move them like now. And I don't agree with, it just really upsets me when I see that. As long as we help the people that are there to move them into safe spaces, I'm for this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. And I want to echo those comments. I have a really hard time with this one on, the backs of the other 2 that we have done. Of course, this one involves one of the same owners as the Harborview Apartments, which we've seen, almost no action and are now taking that to in-camera conversations. So I'm not optimistic that work is going to be done. At the same time, I appreciate that we're working with BC Housing and CMHA, but is there any kind of reasonable expectation that these people will actually be able to be housed elsewhere? I know that we had BC Housing on talking about the overflow beds at the shelter. I know that on, an average night, we're hearing that there's anywhere from, 5 to 10 available beds at the shelter, plus the 8 that are currently available at the old shelter, and obviously more could be added there. But a shelter is not a long-term home. So, in conversations that we're having with BC Housing and with CMHA, who is contracted to source housing options for people, is there any expectation that we actually can find something? Because it's one thing to work with them, but it's another thing to actually be able to be successful in finding options for people.
Yeah, we should be having that discussion with CMHA and seeing who's there and working on that with when we get to that point.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not only are these apartments in deplorable conditions, but they're so unsafe. You can look at the pictures. There's electrical wiring on the ground where it's all wet. It's hanging by poles. It's going from out windows of the apartments out to the trailers. I mean, I just can't believe that it's so unsafe, and there's so much of a chance of a fire happening. But also what caught my eye, and I could be wrong, is it looks like a pipe maybe from wastewater is connecting in the ground. So they're trying to connect to our sewer system in the city. So they've done that illegally as well.
Yes, they've done, Madam Mayor, they've done alterations to the building without building permits. They're trying to install a shower and laundry facility, electrical, they've altered the electrical. So we have fined them on all of these things. We've issued them bylaw tickets, fines, and now we are here.
Yeah.
But it
And
is a very unsafe condition and a potential for hazard.
And I found one picture to be really sad. It touched my heart. Was in these deplorable conditions. Somebody had a hanging basket and a couple of shrubs in the front, trying to make it into a home.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I just have a quick questions. If for a long-term effect, could these people not be housed? You know, the lady who put in the proposal or talked about her, I think she had 24 beds. Lisa, I think it is. Could they not pay their rent subsidy to her and be topped off with BC Housing? Would that not be more of a long-term effect? Because if the people are...
That's an option that's available. That would be, I would say, for the Lisa is a for-profit, not a non-profit, and so it's not a BC Housing necessarily option, but BC Housing does have their rental supplements that they can top up. I'm not sure about the level of support that the people who live in these trailers specifically need, and if that would be a level of support that Lisa's facility would be able to take or not. I don't think we certainly can't commit that option, but BC Housing and CMHA can, work with that as one of the options for sure.
It's something to think about because, I mean, if we got 24 beds, it's not the first time BC Housing has kicked into helping or some kind of organization has helped a profit person. And it might be something to consider. And I think you've been in discussions with BC Housing, haven't you, regarding Lisa in the past?
Yes, I brought that specific option to BC Housing last week because people have been pushing for the old shelter or an alternative to the shelter to be opened on a temporary basis. BC Housing let us know that they are able to enter into agreements with for-profit businesses in terms of leasing space and providing shelter. They are not able to enter into agreements for support work. So if it is strictly living space and supplementing people's rents or helping make that a viable option for people to lease space, they are absolutely able to consider that. They are not able to consider an agreement with a for-profit business as a supportive housing option. So if it's just affordable housing, they can consider that. If it's supportive, they don't enter into agreements with for-profit businesses.
And just to make a comment, I am told, but I don't know if it's verified yet, she does have supportive staff on hand. That's what I'm told. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a hard time with this one because I think in the midst of everything else going on in our community and the existing homelessness and challenges, especially because one of the lines is to remove all trailers. When we did the remedial orders on the Harborview and the Port Pub, there was no necessary implication that that would add to the homelessness in our community because we had an expectation that the work would be able to be completed while people remained in the housing, and the property owners committed that to us as well as an additional kind of verification that it wouldn't add to the homelessness crisis going on. With this one, because we are ordering the removal of the trailers, as I absolutely feel we should, it is unsafe and it's a dangerous situation. At the same time, we know that we will, as a result of this, immediately, as soon as it's complied with, immediately see additional pressures on an already challenging homelessness situation. So this is an even more difficult one to make. And I would argue that probably it's also a more dangerous living situation than the last two. So I don't quite know how to balance that without knowing first that BC Housing or CMHA have some kind of expectation of housing people. And I don't think in this situation that it's necessarily enough for us to say, you know, when we get to that point, we'll talk to them, because we know in this situation we are going to see people displaced as a result of this decision. Tim, do you have any thoughts to add to this?
Madam Mayor, Council, I can appreciate that this is very challenging for you, and that's what your conversation has reflected. Your local government's role is really twofold. One is to our role in terms of housing and mental health and addiction is twofold. One is to lobby senior government, the provincial government, to provide housing and medical support. And we've heard earlier today from Ms. Hartman that BC Housing acknowledges that you are an engaged council on that topic. And Madam Mayor, the time that I've been working for the city, I've never seen a mayor as engaged on this topic of housing to the extent that you have been. So the council takes this very seriously. So we lobby senior government, we support NGOs with funding and other supports, and we leverage city lands and assets toward providing housing, safe housing for our citizens. The other general tool that council has and responsibility is enacting bylaws and enforcing those bylaws to hold primarily landowners to meet the expectations of the community. And that is what's before you now, is should the property owner meet the community's expectations? And I understand the challenge you face that exercising that part of your role is likely going to impact the housing for some of the people that are there. And we heard from Ms. Hartman that there's capacity at the shelter. Some people in other communities she spoke about, Vancouver Island wide, prefer not to take up the housing that's available. They prefer to camp outside the shelter or accept other supports. And I think we have to accept that in the end, it is really the individual's choice whether they accept housing that's provided or not. We'll certainly work with other stakeholders to our fullest extent to ensure that if people are displaced by city action, that there's somebody standing next to our staff, somebody from CMHA or Island Health standing next to us to say to people, let me help you find alternate housing. Can we guarantee there will be alternate housing, or they'll take that housing up? No, I don't think we can. The best we can do is make sure that the people that need to support them are there to provide and offer that support. And I know that's not a black and white answer for you, Madam Mayor, but that's the answer we have, is that the best we can do is keep people safe with the tools that we have, and lean on others and rely on others to provide the other services that other governments provide.
Thank you. Okay, would somebody like to read the motion? Councillor Solda.
Okay, all of it. You want it one by one, or how do you want it done?
Yes,
Madam Mayor?
you can read it all together, I
Okay.
believe.
Fair enough.
Yeah, all
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that the council, pursuant to section 72 and 73 of the community charter, considers that the properties at 3629 4th Avenue, 3633 4th Avenue, and 3655 4th Avenue, and having legal descriptions of Lot 20, Block 46, DL1, ALD, PL, VIP, 197B, Lot 21, Block 46, DL1, ALD, PL, VIP, 197B, and Lot 22, Block 46, DL1, ALD, PL, VIP, 197B, and locked so as to prevent entry, with at least one entrance door capable of being locked from both inside and outside. 8, is that right? Am I on the right thing track here? 4, sorry, I'm on the, yeah, I'm looking at it. I got the pages all locked up here, sorry.
That's okay.
The properties, okay, go back.
Yeah,
The properties
that's perfect.
are in an unsafe condition, and that the structure on the properties, contravene the BC Building Code and the Port Alberni Building Standards Bylaw number 4975, 2018. 2, that council, pursuant of section 72 and 74 of the community charter, declares that the structure and the discarded materials and refuse about the structure on the properties are a nuisance and are so dilapidated and unclean as to be offensive to the community. 3, and further that council pursuant to section 72, 73, and 74 of the community charter resolves that A, Folded Hills Farm and Randall Brown, being the registered owner of the properties, the owner, is hereby required to, 1, I, carry out the following work within 30 days of the date that notice of the resolution is sent to the owner. 1, repair the exterior walls of the structure, including coping and flashing. Is it coping? And flashing to restore the integrity of the building envelope to a condition sufficient to protect the structure from the weather and from infestations of insects, rodents, and other pests, including without limitation by A, remediating any holes, breaks, loose, or rotting boards or timbers, and any other condition which might permit the entry of insects, rodents, and other pests to the interior of the walls or the interior of the structure. B, applying paint, stain, or other protective coating to the exterior walls so that adequately protect them against deterioration. 2, repair downspouts in such manner as to control drainage so that the runoff to neighboring properties and access ways is eliminated. 3, replace and repair all broken or missing hand railings on staircases. At a minimum 3-foot landing at the bottom of each staircase, and each staircase is to be inspected by certified building inspector to be built to code. 4, replace all broken, cracked, or otherwise compromised exterior windows to the weather-tight condition which operates to provide light and ventilation. 5, replace and repair light fixtures in units. 6, replace or repair all damaged, decayed, or deteriorated window sashes, window frames, and casings. 7, replace or repair all exterior doors of the structure so they are weather tight, operational, fit tightly within their frames when closed. And when closed, sorry, this is where my page has got kind of messed. Enclosed and locked so as to prevent entry, with at least one entrance door capable of being locked from both inside and outside. 8, replace or repair the ceilings where mold has occurred and ensure the roof of the structure is watertight condition with no leaks. 9, replace or repair balconies, porches to a safe and clean condition, free from rot, holes, cracks, excessive wear and warping or hazardous obstructions. And 10, replace or repair all fire protection systems, heat detection, smoke detection, fire alarms, fire extinguishers, fire chalking, sprinkler systems, exit signs, emergency lighting, fire separations, and means of egress required by the BC Building Code and BC Fire Code to a functional and unobstructed condition. 11, remove and properly dispose of all refuse from the interior and exterior common spaces of the property, including food waste, combustibles, non-combustibles, furniture, appliances, tires, construction waste, stripped or wrecked automobiles, trucks, trailers, boats, vessels, or machinery, part or components of any of the aforementioned to be an appropriate disposable site. 12, empty, clean, and repair the garbage disposable bins on the property. 13, permanently remove all objects placed, stored, or maintained upon any balcony, hallways, or entranceways which may interfere with the access of the ingress to or from the building in case of fire or other emergency. 14, remove all trailers and recreational vehicles on the property. 15, ensuring all apartment units install working stoves, hood fans with proper ventilation. 16, replace or repair all heat registers and covers. 17, cease all renovations and obtain proper permits and building inspections for renovations. 18, prepare a fire safety plan in cooperation with the Port Alberni Fire Department. And compliance and reconsideration notice time limit recommendations. 4, and further that council pursuant to section 78 of the community charter direct staff to advise the owner that the owner may request that council reconsider this resolution by providing written notice within 14 days of the date on which the notice of remedial action requirement was sent to the owner. And 5, municipality action as defaulters expense. And further, that council pursuant to section 17 of the community charter authorizes city staff to carry out any requirements set out in paragraph 3 of this resolution, which the owner fails to complete within the time permitted by the resolution, and to recover the cost of carrying out such requirement from the owner as a debt. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Solda, for reading that 2-page motion. Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Haggard. And any final comment? Councillor Haggard, and then Councillor Solda, and then Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to step back to your last comment about possibly displacing some people that are living in these trailers. And it breaks my heart too, that is something that we absolutely do not want to do. But at the same time, we do have a responsibility to ensure that people are safe. And if this accommodations were in the least little bit safe, I would also feel the same way as you. But we do have that responsibility to make sure that people are safe in these accommodations. So we have to look at that. And I do trust staff that they will work with the nonprofit organizations that is their job to house these people. So I have that comfort moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, is there, I still worry about the people in the trailers and that, and having them displaced and going through, because some of them are, they say, from the apartments. And is there, I still like the idea of if we can't house them in certain area, you know, like another place, all of them, maybe let's still look at the 24 beds with 6 showers, you know, and you know, just to help them. Is there a way you can reach out to the owner and ask her to make a call, or yourself to BC Housing, just to introduce them and stuff like that?
Yes, thank you. And so I have forwarded along a formal proposal from Lisa to BC Housing. I know Lisa is also discussing that with Island Health. And I will facilitate another conversation if this passes with BC Housing, and encourage them to speak with Lisa directly about a lease opportunity, because I think the holdup is that supportive aspect. And we don't know exactly who is living in these units and what their needs are, but I would imagine there are several people whose needs are just affordability. So that could take the pressure off, and then the old shelter potentially could, house the people who have a bit higher needs because they are a supportive housing option. And I think that what CAO is popping up to say maybe is that we should remember that we do have good nonprofits in this community, who are responsible for housing people, and we will work closely with them. And Tim, if you want to add anything else, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, there's nothing to add. That was what I was going to say. Thank you.
And I understand that, but there is more, like BC Housing did say there was about 80 people-ish that are homeless, but I think there's a lot more now, especially with COVID and that, and with the cost of our housing has gone up and unaffordable for some. So I think there's still a win-win for everybody to be part of this. And even if it's with Lisa, if they could talk to her, and then they could find out exactly what she's all about and what she has, if she has supportive or anything, it's better to go right to the source than play around here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have started those conversations already. BC Housing cannot go outside of what their regulations are, so they cannot fund her for supportive work. That's not to say Island Health can't fund her for supportive work, though. So there might be a workaround, and I will make sure that those conversations are had.
Super. Maybe you could also reach out to her too, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, I have. I've spoken with her quite a few times over this weekend included. Councillor Washington, go ahead if you like. I think you had your hand up as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Solda got my questions answered for me. I was just had concern about the people that are residing in the trailers on Mr. Brown's property. I imagine the renovations can be done, worked around the people living in the apartment building, but I was just had a bit of a pang of concern for the people in the mobile or trailers. So you've answered that quite well, Mayor, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
I'm absolutely in total support of the motion as it's read, and I just want to remind people that there's a trend here amongst the owners and landlords, and I take you back to the condition that the former CJAV building and apartments got to, where we actually got to a point where we had to put a do not occupy on that building, and we're very, very fast approaching that on this area. I drove down the alley the other day to have a look and just see what everybody was talking about. We are so close to being in a situation where it is absolutely not safe nor fair for people to be housed the way these landlords are doing it. And I know the landlord approached us at the last meeting, and he feels deep in his heart that he's applying a service. If he was applying a service, he would take care of those buildings and make sure that those people are housed in a dignified and clean, healthy way. I just know that I understand your feeling with regards to people being misplaced. We're at a point where people are being housed in conditions that are less than suitable for animals. And that's my concern. And we need to find a roof for these people where they can have some dignity, carry on their lifestyle, and just be safe. And I know we're going down that road. I know the past history. If it was a different landlord, maybe I'd feel differently. But anyway, that's just some of my thoughts. And I know the concern, but there's a health and safety issue here too.
Yeah, thank you for that, for those points, Councillor Paulson. And I agree. I think the risk if we don't do anything is the next step outside of our control could be a do not occupy on the building, which could see us, having all of a sudden an empty building and significantly more people homeless with nowhere to go. So I think that these safety issues need to be addressed and need to be addressed immediately. And you're absolutely right. There's no excuse for landlords to operate like this. And I think this council and last council have done a good job of holding landlords accountable. And this is another one that needs that step. So seeing no more hands on the motion, we will call the question. All in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you very much, Gayleen, for that. So moving on to item 5 from the development planner, development application number 2008 for 3483 3rd Avenue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before you for consideration is development permit application number 2008 for 3483 3rd Avenue. The subject property is zone C3 service commercial and is located in development permit area number 2, which guides the form and character of commercial development. The applicant has proposed an extensive renovation of the existing building, including 2 additions and a concrete wall fence. Their intent is to modify the building for an accounting office. Earlier this year, the property owners were awarded a grant in the amount of $19,500 through the facade improvement program, and that grant money will partially fund the proposed development, specifically as it relates to the external appearance of the building. The applicants have submitted plans and building renderings to support a review of the proposed development. Staff do not consider the proposed design to necessarily be compatible with the existing building or the surrounding area, and we do have some concerns about the SEPTED requirements being met. However, the development permit application for 3483 3rd Avenue does meet the majority of the OCP commercial development permit area guidelines, primarily because of how broadly and non-specific those guidelines are and can be interpreted. So the planning department cautiously supports the issuance of development permit number 2008 with the conditions outlined in the attached development permit. However, City Council may wish to ask for further refinement of the design. Staff would also like to provide a report to Council at a later date, if possible, that summarizes the development permit area guidelines with visual details like photos and some illustrations, as we think that this might help get the community to have a little bit of a better understanding of what the guidelines are actually trying to achieve and why they're there for the benefit of the community. And then finally, staff are also recommending to City Council that maybe this is a great opportunity to discuss and consider the merits of delegating minor development permit approvals to staff. For example, a permit value could maybe around $200,000, for example, in order to expedite the process. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Caitlin. And I think that you've made great comments and recommendations around delegating some of the smaller permit processes and really just doing a review to make sure that what is in our requirements is what we want to be in our requirements. So I think those are great, both great suggestions. Councillor Solda.
So why has it come to us? I kind of like that. I like what they've done to the building. I mean, the building has been there for many years, and that would really be wonderful for that area of our community. So I'm just curious, is it because of the peak, or why is it here?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The application is before you today for consideration because the property is located in a development permit area, and the development permit area requires that any sort of facade and site improvements over a value of $25,000 in total require council approval. So this has passed that threshold, so it needs to be reviewed by staff and then approved by council.
Okay. I was kind of curious, Madam Mayor, why it was taking so long for them to get to where they are. Now I understand, but I like what they've done. Anyways, my comment.
Yeah, and I think this is another great reminder of making sure that the authorities are delegated properly and allowing for some of the projects that aren't of a significant value. And not to say this isn't, it is significant, but maybe not in the scale of some of the projects, allowing the planning department to work directly with on approvals and have it move a little bit faster for the developers who are trying to make their projects happen as well. Councillor Paulson.
I certainly appreciate our planning department working with the developer here and with regards to their giving some suggestions and input on design and stuff. Now, having said that, I look at the building, what they plan for the building, and boy, oh boy, what an improvement for that area. I like the design with or without windows. I'm so pleased that somebody has the confidence in our community to invest and to do this. And I think it's just going to be a significant difference in the lower 3rd Avenue area to have this building renovated and looking loved. And I certainly appreciate and support the application.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You're right, Caitlin, it doesn't fit in with the other buildings, but maybe it will help raise the bar of the other buildings in that area as well. And as I said at the APC meeting the other day, I really appreciate how you work with the developers to not just meet the minimum requirements, but to raise the standard of development in our community. But unfortunately, I think in this case that he does meet the minimum requirements, so I don't know how we could say no, but I would encourage you to continue working with the applicant to meet those standards that you would like us to adhere to. So I don't want to say no, but I want you to keep working with them to meet that vision that you have for that building and for that area. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see we have the representative of the developer on. Peter, are you wanting to say anything about the application?
Thank you. I kind of came into the meeting a little late. I think any discussion that you were having had already occurred, but it sounds like Caitlin had some concerns. For us, we're really proud of this building. When we started looking at a new home for our firm, it was important to us that we stayed in Southport. We believe in the revitalization of the business district over here, and we want to be part of it. We wanted a building that could house us for the long term, a quality building with lots of growth potential. But we also wanted to take into consideration safety and confidentiality of the clients that come to see us. And so there are a lot of design elements in this building that very specifically take into consideration our clients' comfort and security, and also the security of the building. As an accounting firm, we are held to pretty high standards as far as client confidentiality and personal information protection and that type of thing. And we take that very seriously. So I don't know if I missed something, whether there were some concerns that you'd like me to address about why the building looks the way it does. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I don't think we have any questions specifically for you, unless anyone has had a question pop up. Okay, Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a question. One of the concerns that our planner had was you were going to have shrubbery against the your cement wall, and she was concerned that would go against the crime prevention to the environmental design. Is there any way that you could work with her to ensure that the shrubbery that you have planned will work with that crime prevention by environmental design theme?
Absolutely. So in my former career, SEPTED was something that I worked with quite a bit. I worked quite a bit in public education as far as that kind of stuff as well. I'm not sure, there aren't any shrubs going along that fence or that concrete wall. I think that's the one you're talking about on the south side of the property. Yeah. So the reason we wanted to use a concrete panel that had a design in it was there was no plans to put shrubbery in front of it. What there is a future plan to put some plants out between the parking area and the sidewalk, and again that has to do with something called territorial enforcement. And if you're looking at SEPTED, it basically just stops people from feeling comfortable walking to the building. In other words, if you drive in and park your car, that's one thing, but we don't want people kind of be able to come from the back alleys and have easy access to the front door. That's why that wall is there, is simply to give more surveillance of the people that are coming to our main access points. But yeah, definitely security is a high concern of ours. And we're really proud of this building. We want to look as professional as we can. And so whatever we do, we're going to be doing something that I think the city and everybody will be proud of. We don't want to be an eyesore.
Thank you. And it certainly doesn't look like you're going to be. So, we want to thank you for your commitment to the community and to staying in the Southport area as well. Your business is one that is an important part of this area, and we're happy to see you staying in the close neighborhood. So, and thanks for working with the planning department on it already to this point, and to your commitment to continuing to do that. Councillor Haggard, would you like to read the motions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that City Council authorize the issuance of development permit number 20-08, and that the corporate officer be authorized to sign the permit, including the following development plans prepared by McGill & Associates Engineering Limited, titled 3483 3rd Avenue renovations, and dated October 2020. McGill & Associates Engineering Limited legal plan, McGill & Associates Engineering Limited existing site plan, McGill & Associates Engineering Limited proposed site plan, McGill and Associates Engineering Limited elevation views, McGill and Associates Engineering Limited proposed renovations, McGill and Associates Engineering Limited proposed floor plan, McGill and Associates Engineering Limited proposed landscaping plan, McGill and Associates Engineering Limited concrete fence structural details, McGill and Associates Engineering Limited sign plan, and 2, that City Council direct staff.
We can do that one separately because that one is on a bit of a different topic this time. Yeah, perfect. So we'll hold it there. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Corbeil. Any final comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And Councillor Haggard, if you'd like to continue to the next one, that would be great.
Great, thank you. I'd like to move that City Council direct staff to provide a report summarizing the development permit area guidelines with visual images that help explain the criteria, as well as information about how to simplify the development permit process with a minor and major development permit distinction.
Thank you. I will second that. And just want to thank Caitlin for her work on this and Brian, our planning department, for their work on this application, but also for bringing this forward, because I think that we, always want to be looking at ways to make sure that we are working as efficiently as possible. And our planning department has an incredible amount going on right now. So, where there are opportunities to not have to have that extra step of going to council for smaller developments, I think that will streamline the process for everyone. So looking forward to taking this next step as well. With that, we will call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And thanks so much, Peter, for coming on.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
So moving on to bylaws, from the item number 1 from the manager of planning, we have development application, official community plan, bylaw and zoning bylaw amendments for 4305 Kendall Avenue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before you for consideration is the development application to amend the official community plan and to amend zoning bylaw, the zoning bylaw for 4305 Kendall Avenue. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the property as follows. So this would involve an amendment to the official community plan to change the designation of a portion of the property from multifamily residential to institutional, and to remove a portion of the property from the multifamily development permit area. This would also involve an amendment to the zoning bylaw to rezone a portion of the property from RM2 medium density multifamily residential to the P1 institutional zone. The rest of the property will remain zoned as RM2 in order to maintain its potential for multifamily development in the future, though no development is currently being proposed for that portion of the property. And then finally, an introduction of a new definition for mother center, and then to permit this as a site-specific use for 4305 Kendall Avenue. Now, the purpose of these amendments is to facilitate the development of a new 2-story building that would provide safe, inclusive housing for Indigenous mothers and children. The applicants have submitted a comprehensive development application, including drawings, site plans, and building elevations, which are included in the report. The proposed development is quite high quality and consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, and will be an attractive addition that complements the site based on the kind of unique layout given its L-shaped design. The proposed building will provide about 16 dwelling units, in addition to childcare spaces, administrative offices, meeting rooms that will operate as a place where mothers with children under the age of 12 may live while receiving these supports. Now, we've proposed that a restrictive covenant be used to ensure that the development is constructed as currently planned. This is because the property, again, is being or would be removed from the development permit area. In considering the application to rezone the subject property, City Council should consider if and how the proposed change in use aligns with the official community plan policy objectives. And City Council should also consider whether the proposed amendment is appropriate for the site and how a change may impact the immediate neighborhood. Based on staff's review, the proposed development application aligns well with the OCP policy objectives for both housing and supportive services. Overall, the proposed development is compatible with the adjacent land uses And the proposed definition of mother center aligns closely with the intent of the P1 institutional zone and with existing permitted uses. The Advisory Planning Commission has previously reviewed this development application at its October 29th meeting. And through discussion, they have recommended that City Council proceed with the OCP and zoning bylaw amendments with some conditions, with support of some of the conditions that have been recommended by staff. Now, the proposed rezoning conditions would ensure that as part of the development process, the applicant completes the following. 1, submit security in the amount required for the completion of water, sanitary, sewer, and storm works. 2, ensure easements are registered on title as required for site servicing. And then 3, register a restrictive covenant on title to ensure that the development occurs as the development plans and building designs submitted at the time of application. Staff are now recommending that council give first reading to the proposed bylaw amendments for 4305 Kendall Avenue, as giving first reading helps move the application move forward while still allowing additional time for the applicant to meet the outlined conditions in advance of scheduling a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that we have the applicants on. Is there anything that the applicant would like to add?
Thank you, Mayor. This is Tara Schmidt from BC Housing. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your planning staff's time and effort so far in working with our consulting team, but also just want to thank Mayor and Council for your consideration for this project, which is very important to us and also to the Hawaiian First Nations.
Thank you. And I appreciate you mentioning Hawaiian First Nations and just wanted to really appreciate the work that they have put into this over years of trying to bring this project to fruition. So yeah, thanks to BC Housing for supporting that as well. Okay.
Hi, Mayor. It's Shannon Zimmerman. We've had a chance to meet out on the traditional territory in Anakla. And yeah, I want to just echo what Tara has said and thank you all for your time and your consideration for this really exciting project. We really believe it will benefit not only Hawaiian families and mothers and children, but also Nchona families overall. So we're really excited to be here and to bring this forward today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shannon. Didn't realize you were
you.
on, but nice to have you on. Thank you for being here. And
Thank
thanks,
you.
pass along my thanks to Chief Dennis and everyone else at Hawaiian for their work on this project.
Thank you. I will do that.
Okay, so with that, Councillor Paulson, would you like to read these motions?
I would love to. I apologize in advance if I kind of foul up the pronunciation, but A, the official community plan amendment number 32, 4305 Kendall Avenue, BC Housing, Umiksu, bylaw number 5015 be now introduced and read a first time.
Great. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any final comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried.
I'd like to move B, that zoning map amendment number 42, 4305 Kendall Avenue, BC Housing, Umiksu, bylaw number 5016 be now introduced and read a first time.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Carried. And maybe before we go to 3, maybe if Shannon is on still, she could just let us know if we are pronouncing it correctly. Is it Umiksu?
It is Umiksu or Umiksu. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great work, Councillor Paulson.
Well done, Councillor Paulson.
Thank you. And Councillor Paulson, the third time, since you're doing it correctly, let's have you do the last one.
It was a shot in the dark, but I got it right. I'd like to move that C, that zoning bylaw text amendment number T26, site-specific use, P1 institutional, bylaw number 5017, be now introduced and read a first time.
Seconded by Councillor Corbeil, and seeing no final comments, all in favor? Carried. Thanks so much. All right. Moving on to item 2 from the Manager of Planning, we have the building bylaw amendments for relocation of recycled homes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So before you for further discussion and consideration are proposed changes to building bylaw number 4577, specifically as it relates to the relocation of recycled homes. So at the request of council, planning and building staff have reviewed the relevant sections of the City of Campbell River's building bylaw number 3060 and the Regional District of Nanaimo's building bylaw number 1250, in addition to the other 7 jurisdictions that were previously reviewed. And a summary of that information is attached within the report. So overall, the review has found that it is standard practice for local jurisdictions to set out requirements for the relocation or move in of recycled buildings. And while the wording of each building bylaw may vary, the intent is typically fairly consistent among most jurisdictions. The City of Port Alberni's building bylaw is fairly consistent with other areas. Now, in both Campbell River and the Regional District of Nanaimo, as well as the other jurisdictions previously reviewed, the bylaws do set up parameters to help ensure health and safety compliance with the BC Building Code, as well as the community fit, based on an appraised value of the proposed structure to be relocated. So currently the city's building bylaw requires that relocated buildings obtain a permit and meet building code requirements to the satisfaction of the building official. Revisions to the bylaw could help provide clarity for staff as well as for the public. And so we've outlined some proposed changes in the report, and these changes would closely reflect the wording used in both Campbell River and the Regional District of Nanaimo's bylaw. Now, it should be noted that the City of Port Alberni's existing wording in the building bylaw currently reflect the ACRD's requirements for moving buildings. So we've really developed a similar approach to the regional district in order to probably ensure consistency and understanding within the region. Staff are looking to consult with the ACRD as well as the local building and development community in an effort to mitigate any confusion that may be created given that the ACRD's requirements for moving buildings do currently align with the city's current bylaws. And beyond that, really, staff don't anticipate that amending building bylaw number 4577 will significantly increase the number of buildings being relocated into the city, as there are likely other physical limitations caused by the surrounding geography that impact the cost and logistics of building relocation. So we list a couple of those within the report, but for example, when moving buildings along the Alberni Highway, Angel Rock restricts the width of building and the wires along the corridor restrict the height. Buildings could be brought up the Alberni Inlet, but as Nickel Brothers has previously pointed out, this is not really a cost-effective way of bringing relocated homes into the Alberni Valley. So we think that the amendments to building bylaw number 4577 may help clarify permit requirements and create a bit more of a transparent understanding, but they won't be able to address those types of physical limitations. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Are there questions on this? Councillor Paulson and then Councillor Corbeil.
Caitlin, thank you so much for your research and putting this together. And I think it really puts the city on good grounds to have this industry properly regulated. I think that it also addresses, I have a feeling, it may not be in my lifetime, but the Angel Rock impediment may not be as serious in future years, maybe 5 to 10 years down the road. I think BC Highways is having a look at that long term. But I think that we're well covered here and well done, Caitlin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Caitlin, question for you. So this now the proposed amendment would say the health and safety portions of the building code, and I think it's part 3, 4, and parts of part 9. So if there was an older building, similar to the neighborhood Ron Paulson lives in, where there's some houses that were built out of old growth fir that you'll never find again, but wouldn't probably meet today's building standards. Would that be deemed to be safe? Those buildings, look to me like they would last, several centuries probably.
Thank you for the excellent question. So with the changed wording that we've proposed, we've put the onus on a registered professional to certify that the building and structure substantially conforms to the health and safety aspects of the building code in certain specific areas. So that includes structure and foundation requirements for specific loads and effects. So that would be covered under that. But that's not to say that an older house wouldn't be able to meet that. It's just to say that someone with a technical qualification would confirm that that house is structurally sound.
That's great. Thank you. And I just want to thank you as well for recognizing the need to make sure we're working collaboratively with the regional district on this if we are changing. I think it's so important that we make sure that we are as consistent as possible within the Alberni Valley. Councillor Solda.
It's interesting because when you go to Coombs, you see a whole bunch of houses on stilts waiting to be moved. And my dad used to do that. And the last time I seen a house moved in Port Alberni was the old Estavilla Hotel right by the McDonald's on Johnson. And they moved the house, which was their main office and their house, to another location in Port Alberni. And you would never recognize it today. It's amazing what they can do to these houses. And my dad did that, moved a house from Canada, from BC to Alberta for my grandparents like that, and had a carpenter fix it all up. So it's amazing what you can do. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Corbeil, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the City Council direct staff to proceed with amendments to the city's building bylaw number 4577 as outlined in the report dated November 16th, 2020 from the Manager of Planning. Further, that prior to council considering final adoption of the bylaw, that staff consult with the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District and local building and development stakeholders on the proposed changes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Okay, seconded by Councillor Washington. Seeing no final comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Move on to correspondence for action, and item number 1 is a letter dated October 30th from Rosemary Bonanno, Executive Director of Vancouver Island Regional Library Board, requesting consideration of the city's representative to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. I currently serve as that representative. Councillor Paulson did prior to me, and we are appointing, if she would like to accept it, Councillor Haggard this year. And Councillor Haggard, I apologize for not discussing this with you first. This is normally done at our organizational meeting every year. But we're doing it a little bit differently this year, just based on this request from the Vancouver Island Regional Library. So I would be appointed as the alternate. There's been a lot of conversation about libraries in the Alberni Valley lately, and specifically with the regional district. And Councillor Haggard, you've been a part of those conversations, talking about the need for, based on the cost that we're paying in the Alberni Valley, and enhanced library services and possibly a second library. So furthering those conversations with the Vancouver Island Regional Library. As we pay the same regardless of how many libraries we have, we want to make sure we're getting as much value for the money that we're paying. So hopefully, Councillor Haggard, you're not caught off guard seeing that there.
I was actually caught very off guard, but I just want to echo what you said. There has been conversations with the regional district, and I would commit to continue working with the regional district and getting an additional library somewhere in the Alberni Valley. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I will move that Councillor Haggard be appointed to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board for a term of 1 year, commencing January 1st to December 31st, 2021, and that Mayor Minions be appointed as the alternate. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Paulson. And wonderful. Seeing no comments, unless Councillor Paulson would like to say something.
Just
Go ahead, Councillor Paulson.
as a first duty, when you get a chance, I know that our local library was scheduled for a renovation. That renovation supposedly was going to start sometime in September or February of this year. And I haven't been to Echo Center for a while, so I don't know if those renovations are underway, but it would be nice to get a handle on actually when we might expect that work to be done. But that can be a report for the new year from Councillor.
And I can provide just a brief update that COVID did slow some of the capital work that Vancouver Island Regional Library has been working on, but our renovation is scheduled still, or not scheduled, is in the works. The final planning stages are just being worked on. It's over $1 million in renovation and furnishings that are going to be coming into our area. And again, that doesn't have a direct impact on Alberni Valley taxpayers. It is funded by the Vancouver Island Regional Library, and we pay the same amount every year based on the formula that's funded by. It doesn't matter if we get a renovation or we don't get a renovation. So when we do, we certainly appreciate that that money is coming back into the Alberni Valley. And a piece of the reason that we are getting that renovation is that there was a significant donation made to the Vancouver Island Regional Library when a member of our community passed away. So just want to really appreciate that contribution that was made as well. And I am very excited to see the final plans for that renovation, which I'm not sure exactly when it's starting, but it should be in the next couple of months. So seeing no final comments, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And item 2, we have an email dated November 17th, 2020 from Ellen Frood, Executive Director for the Alberni Community and Women's Services Society, providing an information regarding the annual Coldest Night of the Year fundraiser event and challenging the city to enter a team. So this is coming up, I would imagine, in February, like it is every year. And the city typically does put a team in, and we usually all participate. So just a heads up on that. And there is information available on ACAUS's Facebook page and website already as well for anyone who wants information on that. Would somebody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Corbeil. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We have no proclamations today, so correspondence for information is next. City Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in your package is the letter that you had prepared and submitted to Heidi Hartman, BC Housing, calling for emergency shelter call to action. You have correspondence from the Port Alberni Port Authority, which is summarizing their quarterly activities. You have a 2019 State of the Island Economic Report from the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance. You have correspondence from the Deputy Minister of Forest, Lands and Natural Resources and Rural Development, acknowledging and thanking for your meeting during the virtual annual AUBCM convention, as well as correspondence from the Acting Deputy Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, again acknowledging your meeting virtually during the UBCM. And finally, correspondence from Sunny Dollywell, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Real Property Division, Ministry of Citizen Services, speaking to the city's 2020 grant in lieu of property tax payment in the amount of $50,286.05.
Thank you. Would somebody like to move receipt of those items? Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Solda. And any items people would like to speak to? Councillor Paulson, Councillor Corbeil, Councillor Washington.
I guess maybe I just want to maybe address all of the acknowledgements from the various ministries that we met with. I sat in on the one meeting with the Minister of Transportation Infrastructure, and there is a new minister in that area. And I just think that we should maybe do some post-provincial election follow-up to make sure that this stuff doesn't kind of get sidetracked. There were some promises made from Transportation Infrastructure about some stuff that would be happening in the new year and in subsequent years. So I just want to make sure that it doesn't get lost The other question would be to our finance manager. The money that we received from the province, 50,286.05, and there was a reference that there's 303,367.74 that to go to the regional district. $1,000 come out of the 50,000, or is that 3,000 over and above the 50? I don't know if Andrew's with us or not today, but
Let's see if Andrew pops up. We'll give him a moment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I believe the amount that was provided is the net amount or the total amount, and then we have to provide the Alberni Clay Quat with the amount that they are owed as part of that.
so our net gain would be about $47,000. That's great. It's newfound money.
Thank you very much. And just to follow up on your comment around our UBCM meetings, I believe the new cabinet is being announced Wednesday is what I've heard. So we will certainly be watching for that. And I think an initial follow-up on some of the important meetings we had at UBCM, specifically the meeting with the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, as well as the meeting with the Minister of Transportation would be a great idea. The Minister of Transportation, of course, did make commitments to funding some work for a survey and preliminary plans for the Beaver Creek River Road intersection. So that is important work to us that we want to make sure, continues to get done this year as it was committed, or this coming year, 2021. I do know that our staff have kept in contact with ministry staff, and as far as I know, that work is still scheduled to be done. So I don't foresee any changes, but definitely just following up on the conversations that we had and continuing to advocate for these needs will be important. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, sort of along the same lines, when we get a new forest minister, I believe we should be following up. As you'll remember, we had a very positive conversation with Minister Donaldson. Unfortunately, he retired, and I hope he left his phone number with you. But, we were talking about fiber supply for local manufacturers and fiber for the community forest, and it was relatively positive. So hopefully with the new minister, we can carry on that conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am going to keep my contact with Minister Donaldson, even though he's not a minister anymore, going to hold him to that commitment. Thank you. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The letter from the Port Authority, item 2, they speak about sprucing up the Clutha Haven Marina. Would that fall under our expenses, or would that fall under their expenses?
I believe it's under theirs, but let's see if our CAO has any information on that.
Mayor, I don't have the answer off the top of my head. I know we've been involved with the Port Authority there. They have led in the expenditures, and we have made some commitments through our economic development department and our COVID response recovery plan. I'll ask Mr. Deacon to report back at the next meeting on that, unless he's prepared to do so right now.
I think at the next meeting, an update is fine. Seeing him not pop up right now.
That would be fine, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't think I missed any hands. Okay, perfect. So we have motion to receive our correspondence moved and seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And no reports from in camera. So would somebody like to move receipt of council reports? Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Paulson. Any items councillors would like to highlight? Okay. Councillor Corbeil.
Yeah, I'd just like to bring up the community forest was going to hold a open house, but of course with the latest round of COVID getting so much worse, it's going to be a virtual open house, and the date hasn't been set. And just with these horrific winds we've had, The community forest does a pretty good job of wood firming along creeks and the like, and there's been very little blowdown due to that, the pruning of the trees. So, kudos for the community forest for doing a really good job of managing a real worthwhile asset. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Washington? Did you have your hand up? Nope. Okay. Okay, then on receipt of council reports, all in favor? Carried. Any new business items for councillors to bring forward? Councillor Paulson.
Just a couple things. At the last council meeting, I think at the end under new business, I asked if we could have just a brief report on kind of the standings of the renos at the squash courts. And second of all, I don't know if this is the right place to do this, but I want to thank our mayor so much for carrying the torch over the last couple of weeks in a very difficult situation. And I know how much work our mayor does, I'm sliding away here, how much work our mayor does behind the scenes that a lot of people aren't aware of. And I think our mayor has been unnecessarily vilified in certain areas. Myself as a councillor, I don't participate in social media, and I will not debate on social media. But if anybody wants to get together and have a coffee or lunch, I'll buy. And I prefer to meet people when I can look into their eyes. And anyway, I just wanted to thank you for carrying the brunt of some of the stuff that's been going on recently. And you're doing a great job, kiddo. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. No coffees or lunches for the next 2 weeks, though.
Say, I take you up on a free lunch, Councillor Paulson.
Thank you. Any other items for new business today? Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't sure whether I fell into council reports or new business, but I echo what Councillor Paulson says. We've heard the comments and recently regarding the city and the mayor on issues of housing and mental health and addiction, but I just want I want people to know that you speak for me as a member of council, and I wholeheartedly support your tireless efforts in regards to supporting the underhoused and the people in our community. I haven't seen another mayor work so hard for this cause, and I've been in this game a long time. So Shari, I'd really like to thank you for your leadership in this issue. You have my full support.
Well, thank you. And I think that just on behalf of council generally on this, I hope that the community knows that just because we don't necessarily communicate every update and every action that we're taking, that I think it's the notion that the city doesn't care about this issue that has been really hard for me. I care deeply about this issue, and I know that every member of our council does as well. So I hope that people, although Facebook is always going to be angry and negative, I hope that the average person in the community knows that this is an important issue that we are working really hard on as a council, every single member. So thank you for that. Any questions today for question period, City Clerk?
Yes, Madam Mayor. We just want to comment about a late email that was received, not specifically a question per se, but just to give council the heads up that we did receive an email at 1:45 from Folded Hill Farms, the property owner, speaking to a list of items that have been carried out or explaining perhaps the delay in some of the requirements being carried out. So we will certainly provide council with that information. And then one item that has been submitted for question period, and it's from John Adams. And he speaks to a presentation by Dr. Paul Hasselback to council back in June of 2019. In that, he indicates that Dr. Hasselback spoke and the CAO commented on the environmental aspect of the McLean Mill. And at that point, apparently there was a Terra West report be forwarded to WorkSafe BC, and Mr. Adams is asking if that was done. The next piece is that the city continue to work with Dr. Hasselback to identify prudent next steps. Was this done? That VHA and other stakeholder agencies be consulted in the future prior to any changes of use at McLean Mill. Has or is this being done? That the city seek comment on this matter from Ministry of Environment. Were there any recommendations, suggestions, or orders given to the city? Was there further communication? And lastly, the staff prepare a report recommending potential local professional participants who might sit on a city advisory group as Dr. Hasselback recommended. Has such a group been implemented?
Thank you, City Clerk. I will pass that over to our CAO, but it sounds to me like a long list of questions that can't necessarily be answered just at the end of a meeting. So CAO, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do recall that meeting, and I recall my recommendations to council, and council, I think, essentially saying make that so. We can bring you a report at your next meeting to tell you what has been actioned and what has not yet been done.
Thank you. I think an update report on that would be excellent. I know that we have actioned some of those specific items, and I know that some of them were recommended as in, to move forward over time as we go through these processes to make sure we are consulting. So some of it, of course, is going to be ongoing, but we will leave that to our next meeting. And with that, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Paulson, seconded by Councillor Corbeil. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.